Hello, my name is Paul Nichols. My background is in safeguarding, and I recently retired as the business manager for the Suffolk Adult and Children's Safeguarding Board. I will be providing the commentary for the presentation today. This session will give you a basic awareness of adult and children's safeguarding, allow you to identify some of the basic signs and symptoms of abuse and neglect so that you feel confident in making a referral and what happens next. The two main pieces of legislation which underpin safeguarding practice are Working Together to Safeguard Children 2018 and the Care Act 2014. They define safeguarding as protecting a child or adult's right to live in a society free from abuse and neglect. Safeguarding legislation identifies certain groups who are in increased risk of abuse, those being children or people who are dependent on others for assistance, or those who lack the capacity to consent. We'll cover that in more detail later, or those who need support with mobility or communication, or people who are isolated in their own homes or receive care in their own homes, or people who may experience discrimination, for example, hate crime. Safeguarding legislation defines different categories of abuse, 4 of which are common across adults and children. They are physical, neglect, sexual, and emotional abuse. There are 8 other categories that are defined in the Care Act and apply to adults. They are self-neglect, domestic violence, modern slavery, neglect and acts of omission. By that we may mean failure to care for somebody's personal needs or medication, psychological abuse, which is similar to emotional abuse, financial and material abuse, organisational abuse, which may be neglect or poor practice in a care setting, and discriminatory abuse due to somebody's age or sexuality, for example. We're going to look at the 4 categories of abuse that are common across both adults and children: physical, neglect, sexual, and emotional, and look at some of the signs and symptoms that you may need to look out for and could indicate to you that there's a safeguarding concern. We're going to look at the symptoms under each category. It's not an exhaustive list. You will notice there is some crossover between categories. For example, depression and self-harm could be a symptom of sexual abuse or emotional abuse. It's worth taking a few moments to look at the symptoms under each category and familiarising yourself with them. Our world is changing, and the spectrum for safeguarding is getting wider and wider. We're now talking about things that we weren't talking about 10 years ago. We now talk about gangs and county lines, radicalisation, trafficking and modern day slavery with our transient communities. We're going to talk about private fostering in a bit more detail in a moment, and sexual exploitation. One of the big issues for us today is coronavirus and the safeguarding risks that brings. Let's look at that. Coronavirus is a massive worry for all of us, and it's increasing some of our safeguarding risks. Here are some examples. Some of our vulnerable children who used to access support through school are now at home, and it could be increasing some of the safeguarding risks to them. Police are reporting that there's an increase in domestic violence and domestic abuse. And some of our vulnerable adults and children are unable to access some of their support functions that they used to access through health centres, children's centres. Some of our parents are losing jobs and are worried about buying food, for example, and are having to make some really difficult choices. There may be an increase in mental health issues due to the stresses and strains due to the lack of some of our support services. Some of our teenagers are unsure about their futures. Will they have university places? What are their exam results going to be? and some of our vulnerable elderly folk are at risk of financial abuse. Unfortunately, we've heard through the Red Cross of people door knocking, trying to sell coronavirus testing kits, and other people will be accessing loan sharks as they fall further and further into debt. Some people may become homeless because they're unable to pay their rents. It's a massive worry for all of us. There is a lot of advice and guidance available for coronavirus. Here are two main websites: the Government Advice and Guidance website, which changes daily, as does the Department for Education website, giving advice and guidance for education settings. Local authorities also have many different access points to advice and guidance, and I would suggest that you look at your local authority website or your Safeguarding Board website, where you can find lots and lots of information on coronavirus. Private fostering is where a child stays with somebody who is not a direct relative for more than 28 days. It's a voluntary arrangement between parents and carers. We all have a duty to inform the local authority of private fostering arrangements. This came about as a result of the learning from the death of Victoria Climbié, pictured here, and the Children Act in 2004. Here are some risk factors that may indicate that a young person or an adult is being exploited, either sexually or, for example, through drugs or county lines. There is now a government website where you can report cases where you think somebody is at risk of modern day slavery. Designated organisations such as local authority, police or health can report these cases through this online portal. The Care Act 2014 clearly defines who is an adult at risk. They used to be referred to as vulnerable adults. It's somebody who has needs for care and support and is at risk of abuse and neglect, and as a result of those needs for care and support is unable to protect themselves from the risk of abuse. Making safeguarding personal is a key part of the Care Act 2014. It means that adult safeguarding should be person-led and outcome-focused. We should reflect adults' wishes, make sure decisions are proportionate, adults are empowered to make decisions about what happens to them next, and we understand what being safe means to them. Mental capacity is a really important part of adult safeguarding. We must not assume that people lack capacity because they make unwise decisions, which we all do sometimes. Everybody must be assumed to have capacity and can make their own decisions, and anything we do to or for them must be done in their best interests and should be the least restrictive of their basic rights and freedoms. If you have a safeguarding concern about an adult or a child, you have a number of options. If you think they are at risk of immediate harm, it's really important that you ring the police. Otherwise, it's often best to talk to your designated safeguarding lead. Most organisations have these. Do you know your designated safeguarding lead is in your organisation? They can help and support you make a referral and make sure that you are making the right decisions. If somebody makes a disclosure to you, or you see something that worries you, or you think is a safeguarding concern, it's really important that you record it. You need to make sure it's accurate, detailed, clear, factual and objective. Write down exactly what you see. Don't make assumptions. Don't say somebody was obviously under the influence of drugs. They may not be. You write they were unsteady on their feet and slurring their words. Record immediately what you've seen and sign and date it before you decide the next step. There are some important things you must not do if somebody makes a safeguarding disclosure to you. In particular, please don't promise to try and keep it a secret. It's important that you must say to somebody, I need to share this so that we can get you the best help. And also don't make any comments about the person who the allegation has been made against. It may influence an investigation. Most local authorities now have a multi-agency safeguarding hub, or a MASH, that can be accessed in a range of different ways. It may be called an integrated front door, customer first, depends on your local authority. This is where all the information is gathered and the appropriate action to be taken based on a full set of information about that person or that family. So we've reached the end of your basic safeguarding training. Hopefully now you'll know what to do if you have a safeguarding concern or a disclosure. You need to know the appropriate route to make a referral. And if you have a designated safeguarding lead within your organisation who can help you.